The cross-examination of a police officer, Thabo Mosia, is expected to continue today in the Senzo Meyiwa Murder Trial in the High Court in Pretoria. Mosia has been questioned about the collection of swabs and exhibits at the Vosloorus crime scene east of Johannesburg following the death of Meyiwa. The former soccer star was shot and killed at the home of the mother of singer Kelly Khumalo in 2014. SABC News reporter Chriselda Lewis is covering this case for us now, and she joins us live from the High Court in Pretoria. Chriselda, good morning. Thank you once again for making time for us. Tell us about the cross-examination continuing this morning, but also some of the highlights from yesterday.
Well, that's right, Aldrin. Critical aspects that came out of court yesterday. Warrant Officer Thabo Mosia, who was the first crime scene investigator who attended to the Senzo Meyiwa murder scene, told this court that the matter involving Senzo Meyiwa was only reported to police 4 hours after it had happened. So Mosia says that at the time that he received the call from a certain Brigadier Ndlovu, this was at about 23:45, this is 11:45, he says at the time the address of the crime scene was not known to him. He was not given the address of the crime scene by Brigadier Ndlovu to attend to what he was being called for, and subsequently he had gone to the Vosloorus police station and went to the control room where he was told that he should then go to the hospital. Now, this is the hospital where Senzo Meyiwa had been taken to, and it was there that a police van only then took him to the scene. He says he only arrived at the scene at about 12:20. This is now the next day, on the 27th of October 2014. So this is quite critical, Aldrin, in the sense that you would recall that inside this court, there are statements that have already been read relating to certain witnesses who claim that the crime scene had been cleaned by one individual, including a certain Maggie Peary, who we understand to be one of the neighbors of the Khumalos in Vosloorus. You would recall in that statement, it says that Maggie Peary had gone inside the house, she'd removed some of the alcohol cans and even cleaned certain aspects of the house. And when she was asked why she was doing that, she said that she didn't want police to see that people inside the house had been drinking alcohol. So the question then remains, and I expect this to be brought up quite sharply by the defense in cross-examination by advocate Chriselda Lewis for accused number 4 this morning, in that he would then want to know, is there a possibility that within that 4 hours, in that 4-hour delay, something could have happened inside that house? Could the crime scene have been cleaned? Are there individuals who were not authorized to be at the crime scene? Were they at the crime scene, and exactly what is it that they did? So the procedure relating to what happened when police arrived also at the crime scene is something that's going to come under sharp scrutiny as cross-examination continues here this morning. One of the other critical aspects as well that came out in court yesterday, Aldrin, is that you would recall that when Senzo Meyiwa was lifted by what some of the witnesses said was some of the neighbors and the people that were inside the house at the time, when he was lifted from inside the house and being taken into his X6 to be transported to hospital, he was taken through the kitchen door. And when Warrant Officer Thabo Mosia was asked whether he found some blood spatter or some blood stains in the kitchen, which would have been the expectation if you had Senzo Meyiwa's body being brought from that area through the kitchen door, he says that no blood stains were found in that particular area. Perhaps what we've previously heard also is some witnesses indicate at the spot where Senzo Meyiwa had been shot, he had not been bleeding quite much. It had just been a very small hole here with not too much bleeding. Perhaps some of those are the aspects that will also come up. But what we're also expecting is the defense to also to zoom in quite sharply on what we also heard yesterday. We heard Warrant Officer Thabo Mosia tell this court that no gun residue tests or gunpowder tests had been done on any of the individuals that were inside the house at the time that Senzo Meyiwa was killed. So this would be Kelly Khumalo, Zandi Khumalo, Tumelo Madlala, Mtongozisi Twala, as well as Longwe Twala, and Gladness Khumalo, who is the mother to the Khumalo sisters. So we're expecting the defense to zone in quite sharply on that. Why didn't police, who were first responders to the crime scene where Senzo Meyiwa had been shot dead, why didn't they rule out the possibility that any of the individuals that were inside the house could have been suspects or might have even pulled the trigger? Because we now know, of course, that a gun was involved. Why didn't police satisfy themselves that any of the individuals that were inside the house did not pull the trigger? We're expecting that to come under sharp focus here this morning. I'm hearing, Aldrin, but certainly this might be something that might be confirmed in court a bit later on today, is that we might have a very short day. I think, and I'm hearing, of course, all of this will be confirmed inside court. There's a possibility that Advocate Zandile Mshololo, who represents accused number 5, might not be present in court today. We'll wait for the court to confirm that. But if indeed that is the case, Advocate Zitulele Nxumalo for accused number 4 will proceed with his cross-examination, or continue with his cross-examination, and possibly we might have the matter adjourned to next week, Monday, when we will proceed. But we're expecting the defense very sharply to focus on what police did, what they didn't do, why there was such a delay, what happened within that 4 hours that the first crime scene investigator had, if I can, struggled to get to the scene, because he says he did not even have an address from the officer that called him about what had happened at the home of Kelly Khumalo's mother.
Yeah. And just a final one, Chriselda, is around the swabs. One is the swab that wasn't taken on the bedroom door opposite the bathroom. Yeah. And also now you mentioned that it was said that Senzo Meyiwa was taken out of the kitchen, and no swabs, though, were done on the kitchen door. Yeah. What was Thabo Mosia's explanation around that?
Yeah. Well, Aldrin, we were getting to that yesterday before court had adjourned. You would recall that, Thabo Mosia was asked whether he seemed a bit confused. At some point, he said he was a bit confused about the sequence of the swabs. This was exactly at the point where Advocate Zitulele Nxumalo was asking about whether which swabs he did on which bedrooms. Remember, part of the testimony that we've heard is that Tumelo Madlala, at some point after these two alleged intruders had entered the house, he had ran to the bedroom. Kelly Khumalo had run to another bedroom. We also heard Zandi Khumalo said she ran to the bathroom. So Advocate Zitulele Nxumalo would want to know exactly where the swabs were taken. Now, this is going to be very critical in the instance that what we already heard yesterday, Aldrin, and you're quite correct, is that Warrant Officer Thabo Mosia has already told this court that he didn't do any swabs on the kitchen door. Now, this is critical because this is the kitchen door which is alleged to have been used by these two alleged intruders to have entered the house. Why would you not do swabs on the kitchen door? His explanation was that, well, he believed that given that there'd been a lot of people who had been in the house, those who were inside the house at the time that Senzo Meyiwa was shot and killed, were also moving around. That's one of the aspects, because remember, that would speak to what the defense has long been contending, is the contamination of the scene. How many people were there? We already now know from the two police officers, Mtetwa as well as Matebula, that the crime scene had not been cordoned off the very first time that they attended to the scene. They'd only cordoned it off after returning from the hospital and realized that it was in fact a crime scene that they'd left behind after they saw Senzo Meyiwa sleeping, facing upwards. This was on the stretcher, as they described, inside the hospital. So a lot is going to be focused on police procedure. Was that followed? Was it properly followed? Did police make any errors? What happened within those hours, that between the incident and when this was actually reported to police? The swabs that were taken, where were they taken? Why were they not taken on certain places? Because I also just heard, just before, Advocate Zitulele Nxumalo had asked Thabo Mosia whether he was confused, whether he was feeling a bit tired, and at some point, the judge then decided, let's adjourn the matter to today, and we're going to now zoom in quite sharply on which doors he did swabs on, because what we now know is that multiple people ran into several directions, into bedrooms, into the bathroom as well. Did he do swabs on all those critical points? But what we already know is that he did not do a swab on the kitchen door, and this is the kitchen door that these alleged intruders used to get inside the house. He will certainly be grilled on that, amongst other issues.
Thank you so much, Chriselda Lewis, the SABC News reporter. And of course, the matter resuming at around 10 o'clock this morning.